Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast, coming at you on the 30th of April here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We are from the niche-case.com, and all we do is go deep into the mangroves. About Aotearoa sport today, we are going to be breaking down the Blackcaps World Cup squad for the T20 World Cup specifically. Looks pretty interesting there. The Warriors, the New Zealand Warriors, they lost to the Titans. So shout out to them. Big up the Titans as well, first win of the year. But the Warriors also won the Under-17 Harold Matthews Cup competition. And it was a pretty interesting weekend for all Warriors junior matters. Even the Titans game featured the debut of Zion Mai-UU, so that was pretty interesting. So we'll be doing a little deep dive into the Warriors weekend across the grades. Also a few Kiwi-NRL notes. We got the Wellington Phoenix waiting on an A-League game between the Central Coast Mariners and Adelaide United. That will go down on Wednesday night, and the result of that will determine who finishes first, top of the league in the A-League. So we'll be chatting through that. We've got some flying Kiwis to touch on. And as always, we will be looking at NBL basketball, where Wellington Saints are 5-1, Franklin Bulls are 5-1. Two of the best teams in the NBL. So it's good stuff happening there. Fresh yarns on our website at the moment. We've got a T20 World Cup squad breakdown. That's there. Kiwi-NRL Spotlight for Zion Mai-UU's debut. I actually did a T20 series debrief from the Pakistan stuff over the weekend, just prior to the World Cup squad being announced. And that did put more of a focus on some of the young players that were in that series. So if you want to check in with that, have a gaze. That's on the website. Flying Kiwis will be coming. Anything else on your radar to write about?
Well, there'll be something Phoenix related at some point in the week. I might just, busy start of the week, so I might just wait until after that Central Coast game when we can actually talk about, write about who they're actually going to be playing. And, well, we won't know who they're playing because it'll depend on an elimination final, but we'll have a better idea based on whether they're first or second. But that'll be later in the week, probably on Thursday. I would suggest definitely some Phoenix things, and we'll see what else pops up. Definitely a Flying Kiwis coming up later today, though.
And many of the ideas we are throwing up here today, they were typed out. They were explored. In our Monday newsletter, we whip out a newsletter every Monday and Friday evening via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. Lots of great New Zealand sports information, insights, bits and pieces delivered to you every Monday and Friday. So check that out on Substack. And there is an option. If you do love a bit of Substack, you can upgrade to a paid Substack subscription, and that will give you access to our weekly subscriber podcast that we record on Thursdays. And there's probably a timely opportunity to break down where the Wellington Phoenix are sitting after that game on Wednesday. That's what we do for our subscriber podcast. We'll be also touching on any other Kiwi sporting matters that arise between now and then. And as I said, you can access that with a paid Substack subscription, or you can join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/EL Nichecase, and you not only have access to the subscriber podcast, but you get the newsletter copied into the Patreon feed as well. So you don't have to sign up to the Substack if you're part of the Patreon whānau, because that's coming straight to you as well the next morning. So there's a couple of avenues there to support the Niche Case and access our subscriber podcast. If you don't want to do any of that, but you want to make a donation, you can hit us up on Buy Me a Coffee as well, or you can just cruise along with us, have a listen, have a read, build up your Aotearoa sporting yarn ability to impress your friends and whānau. And we're out here. We're doing our best. So make sure you're following us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and all that stuff. Don't really like social media. We're not going too deep into appeasing the social media communities. But you can follow us if you want. You can have a little gaze because we're doing our best for Aotearoa sport. And of course, make sure you check out our website, theniche-case.com. All podcasts start with a bit of mindfulness here at the Niche Case. So what do you got?
They do, and this one is coming from ancient poet Rumi, one of the recurring sources, I think, of the mindfulness. And this one actually has a bit of flow to it as well, which is interesting to read when you consider. Yeah, it's only 2 lines, but it's got some bars. There's a rhyme in there, and I think that's a little bit accidental when you're considering that it was actually written originally in ancient Persian. But this is how it worked out. It's the Dharma of mindfulness. I don't know.
Should I start beatboxing or?
Oh, if you want, you should lay something down. It goes, indecision is the prison in which the soul is kept captive.
Oh, God. Your mindfulness always just hits me like Cupid's arrow into my heart. It's just always straight to the point. Can you repeat it, please?
Indecision is the prison in which the soul is kept captive.
Beauty. So you got to make a decision.
One way or another, you gotta do something. What's that word? Intentful? No.
With intent.
With intent will do. Yeah, you act with intent. One way or another is the worst spot you can find yourself in, I guess. The spot in which your soul gets held captive is that in between stage, eh? That little like, should I stay or should I go? Where am I here? Half in, half out kind of spot. Don't really do you any good.
And if you're battling indecision, I'd suggest that doubt has a prominent spot in your brain. And if you're dealing with a lot of doubt, that's where things get iffy. And it's indecision and doubt don't seem to lead to the best results. How about that?
And one of the easiest possible examples we could use as well here is the sporting example of when you see a team that's playing confidently versus a team that's playing with a little bit of doubt, a little bit of indecision. That tends not to go so well for them, right? That's when mistakes start to happen, and that's when losses start piling up.
Baseball.
Yeah.
It seems
the cure for indecision.
It seems a
Make
bit
the decisions before you even start.
It seems a bit ridiculous to just suggest we all live by the baseball, but as we've said over the last few years, and thinking back to when Brendan McCullum took over the Blackcaps team as captain, all of that is just about decreasing the doubt, decreasing the indecision, decreasing the fear. And it's not necessarily a special baseball thing. It just seems like the best way to live your life and also the best way to play sports. Speaking of the Blackcaps, we've got a T20 World Cup squad. And this is my overarching umbrella thought to start us off here, is it's another one of these Blackcaps World Cup squads that is prepared for any conditions within that area of the world. It's prepared for any matchups, any situations, and it's prepared for a month of games. The games come every couple of days. You got to have the players in your squad who can do the job at the highest level, because someone's going to get injured, someone's going to be out, someone is going to have some stink form. But then you need to win World Cup games, and you need to have the right matchups. You need to have the spinners, the seamers, the batters, the lefties, the righties. And this Blackcaps T20 World Cup squad has got it all.
Except for a wicketkeeper.
Yeah,
they didn't pick one of those. Which actually, looking back, because that's the confusing part about this is the third T20 World Cup in 4 years. So they're all starting to merge together a little bit in my brain. It's a little bit hard to pick one from the other. But looking at their squad last time, I don't think they picked a wicketkeeper then either. So this is actually kind of just consistent with what they did last time. Tim Seifert, I don't believe, was there in 2022. And he's not there in 2024, which I I felt like is the biggest sort of exclusion. Like wouldn't have minded maybe Ben Sayers sneaking in there. I thought Adam Milne was a chance, but it was sort of, you know, didn't expect Matt Henry, but I also understand why Matt Henry's in there because although he's only played 17 T20 internationals, he's been very good recently. Um, and what he lacks in T20 experience, he obviously has an abundance in experience in the other formats, including very crucially tournament experience from ODI World Cups as well, which is a massive factor here. And I think almost everyone in the squad has been to major tournaments before. Very experienced team. And I guess ultimately they decided in the format where perhaps wicket keeping is the least crucial of the three formats. I mean, you can't go into a test match without a specialist wicket keeper. You probably shouldn't be doing so in ODIs, although they have managed to convert Tom Latham into a wicketkeeper for that format. So there's sort of the bridge there. T20s, you might get away with it because there's not as much playing and missing, and you're not really getting too many stumpings. And Devon Conway's pretty good, and I guess Finn Allen is the backup. Not Glenn Phillips. I'm keeping an eye out for people who try to suggest that Glenn Phillips is the backup wicketkeeper in this squad because Glenn Phillips is a frontline spinner in this squad. We know this now. And also the best outfielder. So like outfielder, not just outside the 30. I mean, outfielder is in everyone, not wicketkeeper. You kind of need him there as well. He is serving a more important purpose and he doesn't like being wicketkeeper. So that's just, I'm hoping people understand we're beyond that at this point. But yeah, I guess they just decided they'd rather have Rachin Ravindra as their backup batting cover versus Tim Seifert, who would also have been a specialist keeper. It's a little bit of a brave, unconventional decision, but like I say, I think they kind of did it last time as well. So it's also consistent in a way from the Blackcaps, and it's just a way of making sure you can get your best 15 cricketers into the squad ultimately, which I think they're more or less done, you know.
Well, Milne's out injured.
And Milne's out injured, so he wasn't.
He's not there. And
which shock horror.
Yeah, easy on. Shout out to Adam Milne. Like he is, since the start of 2023, which I've used for a lot of my breakdowns, T20 cricket since the start of 2023. He's the leading wicket taker, and of the main bowlers, he's got the best strike rate. So Adam Milne's a really good T20 bowler for New Zealand, and he had just started to stack up some games in the Blackcaps as well. So it's unfortunate for him. Matt Henry is... So his stats since the start of 2023, they're right there with Milne, Southey, Ferguson, Sears, all those dudes. And Ben Sears is a travelling reserve in the squad, so it's not like he has been left out, and I think that's a pretty exciting selection, just giving Ben Sears the travelling reserve spot. But as you said, Matt Henry is quite experienced, and he has played how many T20s did you say he's played? 17 or so?
17 overall in his career, yeah.
11 of them have come since the start of 2023.
Yeah.
So he has entered the T20 first 11 a few times recently, and to be honest, it's aligned with him. Like he was always a good ODI bowler. Spot opens up in the test squad consistently. He takes that opportunity. Right now, he seems like the best test bowler we have. Spots open up in the T20 squad for random tours around the world, little development spots here and there. Henry's bowling pretty well. And he is the most economical Blackcap seamer of the main seamers since the start of last year, second only to Mitchell Santner. There aren't big margins in play here, but all of which is to say Matt Henry's pretty good. And he's in the squad. Tom Latham did a lot of wicket keeping growing up, so don't put Tom Latham in the casual wicket keeper.
Fair call.
He did come up a lot as a wicket keeper in the younger days. Tim Seifert. So, given that Glenn Phillips is the third wicket keeper, and you mentioned Sorry, I've got a lot of thoughts in my mind here, but bear with me because you did mention the Glenn Phillips bowling thing. And while we're on this topic, quick info, once again, Alex Malcolm is the geezer who did this write-up, and there was no mention of this in the New Zealand cricket release of the squad. At no stage via New Zealand cricket were Colin Munro or Martin Guptill mentioned. But when you're dealing with the international media, they got to highlight these dudes. The possibility of recalling veteran batters Colin Munro and Martin Guptill, despite both being full-time franchise players. Well, brother, we got Rachin Ravindra. He's better than both of them. You know, we don't need them. This is the new era of Blackcaps cricket. We're moving forward. None of these old dudes are playing. Like, we don't care. And old Steady, he said, but when you look at the group of batters that we've selected, there was no room for them. Because the other
He's
guys,
right too.
The other
Not a lie was
guys
told.
are really good. Are you selecting Colin Munro ahead of Fenelon, Mark Chapman, Daryl Mitchell, Rachin Ravindra, Glenn Phillips? No, you're not. We're moving forward. We don't want to go backwards. No Neil Wagner, no Colin Munro. Get him out of here. We're moving forward. Back to the cricket. Tim Seifert's actually been pretty good since the start of last year. However, a lot of that was comes from last year specifically. This year, he's averaging 19 with a strike rate of 116. So since the start of 2023, he's got an average of 28, strike rate of 142. That goes down to 19 average and a strike rate of 116. So last year he was really good. This year, not so good. And if Tim Seifert had consistently churned out T20 runs this year, he might have worked his way into that squad. Unfortunately for him, he didn't score enough runs. And as you highlighted, they don't see the value of a specialist wicketkeeper as high as selecting as many batters and bowlers as you can. And if, like, I think there's a chance Glenn Phillips plays as a wicketkeeper because he's the third choice wicketkeeper. So instead of being fourth or fifth choice wicketkeeper, he's the third choice wicketkeeper. And I'm a bit worried about Devon Conway. So if Devon Conway's not playing, then it's Fenelon who's your wicketkeeper, then Phillips is the backup wicketkeeper. Like you, I'm all aboard Phillips won't be a wicketkeeper, and that shows people who haven't been watching Blackcaps cricket. But this is about Devon Conway. Because Devon Conway's averaging 16 with a strike rate of 119 since the start of last year. And Devon Conway has hit an almighty slump in Test and T20 batting for New Zealand. We've covered that all summer. And now Devon Conway might go into the T20 World Cup as a wicketkeeper, having not played any cricket. Apparently he's in the IPL having a giggle, kicking back like most of the Kiwis do. But he's not scoring runs because he's not playing cricket. And I am a little bit worried about that Devon Conway spot. I think Fenelon can do a job as the wicketkeeper, and I think Fenelon is going to be pretty important for the Blackcaps, considering how good he is at whacking the ball. But you mentioned Ravindra as being batting cover. I think Ravindra
You reckon there's a spot in the 11?
I think there's a spot for Ravindra in the first 11, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's at the expense of Devon Conway. Because Ravindra...
Yeah, I can see that being the most likely, yeah.
Can I give you the two highest... Shout out Tommy Blundell. Strike rate of 168.42, but he's only played 2 games. Can I give you the next two highest Blackcaps T20 batting strike rate since the start of 2023. First, Finn Allen, 163.8. Second,
Yep.
Rachin Ravindra, 152.38. So there is a chance that you can open the batting for New Zealand in this T20 World Cup with Rachin Ravindra and Finn Allen. If Conway's not in form. Like if the coaching staff are watching Devon Conway at training and he's dangling his bat outside the off stump and he's finding ways to get out and he's not middling the ball and they're like, hey mate, you're out of form. Probably still injured maybe. We're going to go a different direction. The Finn Allen Rachin Ravindra direction is pretty enticing because Rachin Ravindra loves to whack it. Like he scored his ODI World Cup runs fast. He's got the second highest batting strike rate of this T20 World Cup squad since the start of 2023. And I think that's a left-hand, right-hand combination. Seems pretty useful. And the only issue there is that it does put a bit of pressure on Finn Allen to be the wicketkeeper, but he's done it before. Again, he's someone who did a lot of wicketkeeping growing up and coming up through the grades. And that's something I'd like to highlight, is just how there is a possibility that Rachin Ravindra is a key figure in this batting lineup. Because if you go Allen, Ravindra, Williamson, Mitchell, Phillips, Chapman, then we're getting into that middle order where there's plenty of oomph. You might go Neesham, you might go Bracewell. I actually think batting and bowling, this is a really good team, but the options available are also quite enticing. Because again, they can play three spinners, Bracewell, Santner, Sodhi. They can play an extra seamer. They can play an extra batter. They can do a lot of things with this team. And once again, I'd just like to highlight Ravindra is someone Ravindra can bowl. I'd actually throw out that Ravindra is a better T20 bowler than Glenn Phillips as well. Ravindra's best bowling comes in T20 cricket. So on behalf of the niche case, I'd like to upgrade Ravindra from batting cover to sneaky, important first 11 cricketer.
Well, I mean, I talked about the T20 World Cups all blending together, but there was also an ODI World Cup in that time span as well, which Rachin Ravindra entered as batting cover and then sneakily became the best performer of the entire tournament for the team, like one of the top run scorers for any team at that thing. You know, there's a little bit of hints of potentially history repeating itself there. Like he's in a very similar spot, and also, I mean, in that case, it was Williamson dealing with injuries, which was what allowed him to get in. He just took his chance brilliantly from the first game onwards. In this case, it is probably Devon Conway's form slump, and also not just form slump, but the lack of cricket recently, like the lack of opportunities to even get out of that form slump. That's concerning. And at their best, I think Devon Conway is the better T20 opening batter. I'd prefer that, but I don't know that you're going to get him at his best. At least we haven't seen that for a little while. Whereas Ravindra is just consistently, every opportunity he gets, he seems to make the most of it. And that is a trend that I don't think is so like airy-fairy or whatever. That's not just plucking something out of the air and romanticizing it. That's like, at this point, that's just a factual trend of his career. Is he gets an opportunity, he does the best he possibly can with it. That's not something to shrug off heading into a major tournament, which the Blackcaps should go into feeling like they can compete for winning the entire thing. They make the semi-finals of every other tournament they play. So if that's your minimum, then your maximum is lifting the trophy. That's clear as day. You make the semis, you're 2 wins away from that. I'm not at all opposed to that idea of the Ravindra Fennell opening partnership. I actually kind of really, since you mention it, really like that idea. I'm growing on that very quickly.
Especially because, again, they are going, if they are opening together, they're going to be hyper aggressive together, left hand, right hand.
Yep.
The best thing about this Blackcaps T20 team, I think the best thing about most Blackcaps T20 teams in major tournaments, because outside major tournaments, it's a developmental exercise, is Kane Williamson's there. You got the safety net, number 3. And as you see around the world, and a lot of stress about Virat Kohli and his strike rate and all these stats and stuff, and we've just talked a lot about stats here, I don't care about Kane Williamson's stats. I just like having him there. It's just nice. Especially when you've got 2 young bulls at the top of the order who are going to have an absolute crack. They're going to be flailing 6s and 4s all around the park. You want a bit of Williamson mana just coming in number 3. He can adapt to the situation. He can build out his innings. He can anchor the innings. He can up the ante. He can do everything you need because what's coming after him? Hitters. Mitchell, Phillips, Chapman. All these dudes are going to have a whack as well. And I just like having Williamson there. But I like having Williamson there even more if you got Allen and Ravindra, which is actually the same if you had Allen and Conway, because Conway might get out early and then you need Williamson there.
Yeah, he ties that order together in a way that's quite important. You don't need everyone to go slogging 100 miles an hour. You just need some people to do that. And you still need to preserve wickets through a 20 over game. It's not you don't have to bat for hours and hours and hours, but you also just can't be putting yourself in a situation in a must-win match, tournament cricket, where you're like 40 for 4 or something like that because you've gone too hard too early against good bowling attacks and not quite summed up the situation or whatever. Like, Williamson is your cover for that. He's your insurance policy for that, with hitters above him and hitters after him. I don't need to see him scoring at 160 strike rate. If him scoring 110 is probably fine because you've got the guys who'll make that up around him as he works singles and just the other factor about Williamson that is not reflected in any statistical things, but batters just seem to be better when he's at the non-strikers end. Like, he just exudes confidence in a way where not just confidence, but like calmness as well, in a way that allows other batters batting with him to be at their best. Like, you think of how many record partnerships he's been involved in. He's not scoring all of those runs himself. He's bringing the best out of others as well. I'm a little more not sketchy, but just a couple more reservations maybe about the bowling attack. It's part of why I wondered if Sayers might get in there ahead of Henry, is just to have that that X factor, because I think not here for any Tim Southee slander, because his T20 stuff has actually been his best format over the last couple of years. That's fine. And also the leadership aspect, I am a little bit concerned about the fact Trent Bolt's played like 2 T20s in the last 3 years or something like that. Partly because you expect him to be swinging the ball at the start, and if the ball moves, he's going to be amazing. But I also wonder about, so who bowls the last over in this team? You can probably hold it back for some Trent Bolt. I think that would be all right. Jimmy Neesham did it a couple times. So it's like touch and go if he's a first 11 player, because it might be him or Michael Bracewell or Mark Chapman. Too many.
Mikey Chat.
I'm swinging my M's around. M Chappie. I think death bowling's been an issue for a wee while, and I'm not entirely sure what the plan is there, but I guess the plan is to take wickets up front. And if you do that, you're all right. Because I don't really know that Matt Henry's a dude I'd trust bowling the last over either, whereas he's someone who is going to be at his best bowling early in an innings in the first power play. I don't necessarily see that later on. And I think that maybe is common of a lot of our seam bowlers. But, take wickets up top, it's not an issue, is it? Score enough runs, it's not an issue. You can't have the perfect team.
But Trent Bolt's one of the best T20 bowlers in the leagues around the world.
Yeah, I wonder how often that translates, eh?
I think, I don't know if it does. Shout out to Trent Boult. He's played two T20s earlier this year. I think they were against Australia. Didn't take a wicket, went for 12 RPO,
Yeah, he got
which
smashed.
makes him the most expensive bowler and the only Blackcaps bowler to concede over 12 runs and over since the start of 2023. I don't really have any issues about Trent Boult, but it's going to be a fascinating kind of cricket experiment to see how he does perform, given what he dished up earlier this year for New Zealand. Just quickly,
And from memory, he wasn't amazing at the World Cup, eh? At the ODI World Cup. Like,
I
he wasn't
don't think so.
terrible, but he also wasn't the lead strike
Yeah, because
bowler they kind of hoped him to be.
that's when we had all the data about Trent Boult swinging the ball and ball movement in World Cups, how it's like the least movement he's ever had at a World Cup. It's like, yeah,
Mm.
no crap, he's in India. The last
Yeah.
World Cup was in England. The World Cup before that was in New Zealand. Like, let's get it together here, folks. Just quickly, though. The Black Caps always make World Cup semi-finals. So just take a bit of gratitude. Like, we are New Zealand. We are probably one of, if not the smallest test playing nations in the world. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and be like, oh, the Black Caps suck because they don't win World Cups. They're always in the semi-finals. So let's enjoy that. And also, the B team, the C team, just went to Pakistan with a 2-2 series drawn. And we're actually rolling around 500 for T20s in Pakistan. So we're pretty good. And I did cover that Pakistan series quite closely. Tim Robinson was all right. He had a nice little whack a few times, as did Josh Clarkson. So there is that next tier that is quite exciting. None of whom are going to feature here in this World Cup, nor should they, to be honest. Like Josh Clarkson, Tim Robinson, Foxcroft had a few good moments. Will O'Rourke continues to be amazing. Tough introduction for Zach Folks, but that is the development exercise. You put them into this situation, they get better from these debut series. Ben Lister. So the Black Caps, what I wrote down was that the Black Caps drew that series, and after game one, which was washed out, they had a player unavailable for each of the next 4 games. I think by the 5th game, they had 3 players unavailable. So again, that's pretty impressive. One of those players who was unavailable was Ben Lister, who only bowled 2 overs in that series. I had him as like the best one of, maybe Sears was the best, but Ben Lister, one of the best Black Caps T20 bowlers in that squad. And he only bowled 2 overs, 1 wicket at 5 RPO. So again, looking back on that series, it was pretty impressive considering it was a development squad and players were unavailable for all 4 games that were actually played. First game washed out. Let's move into some rugby league matters where we did talk about the Warriors versus Titans in our subscriber podcast, which we recorded last Friday. So if you are a member of the Patreon fund, or if you do have a paid Substack subscription, go check that out for our review of the loss to the Titans, which was obviously a bit of a stinker at Mount Smart, and the Warriors aren't that good at Mount Smart. We did have the debut of Zion Mai'u. As expected, he became a fan favorite as soon as he ran the ball, so that was good to see that play out. And there was another bit of news last week that I found rather fascinating. Did you hear about the Warriors signing Jet Cleary?
Yeah, I did hear about this. Cleary, the youngest, isn't it?
Well, there might be more
Well,
brothers and sisters, but he's younger
yeah,
than Nathan, and he is a member of the Cleary whānau, and he will be joining the Warriors. And this was fascinating because the signing of Jet Cleary was put up in headlines. Even the Warriors, they announced that a special signing of Jet Cleary. I actually did a yarn last year about the Warriors and what you're missing in 2023, and I included a tweet in there from someone, I think it was Lang or someone like that, who was like a year ago was saying that Jet Cleary might be signing with the Warriors, and nothing happened up till this point, and the Warriors signed Jet Cleary. So this had been on the radar for over a year, first and foremost. But the thing that's fascinating about this is that it's not really about Jet Cleary. And this is, I just view this as a nice little moment of like why we do what we do. Why you're listening to the Niche Cage podcast. Because you would have seen the Jet Cleary news. And it was everywhere. It was almost as big as signing James Fisher-Harris, to be honest, which was a bit interesting, a bit crazy, but it was broadcast everywhere. It's a big moment for the Warriors. Jet Cleary is the 5th young Aussie half who has been signed by the Warriors under Andrew McFadden and Andrew Webster. He's the 5th. The 4th was young Jack Thompson, who is from the Newcastle region. And young Jack Thompson started this year, by the looks of it, with the Newcastle Knights Harold Matthews Cup team. Then he popped up a few weeks later in the Warriors Harold Matthews Cup team, which is under 17s. And what happens? The Warriors go on to play finals footy in under 17s. They go on to win a couple of finals games. They go on to win the Harold Matthews Cup, New South Wales' most prestigious, illustrious, greatest under 17 competition. The Warriors just won it, and they won it with this dude Jack Thompson in the halves, who, by the looks of it, they took off the Knights mid-season. So that's pretty interesting. As we've talked a lot about, you've also got Jesse Sorich and Talon Egan, who are playing SG Ball. Be curious to see where they pop up if they do play Jersey Flag later on this year, because SG Ball is all finished now. But they were both playing SG Ball footy for the Warriors this year. Again, Jet Cleary, he's from out west Panthers region. Jack Thompson, I think he's from Cessnock, up by Newcastle. Jesse Sorich, he's from Byron Bay. Talon Egan, younger brother of Wade Egan, he's from Lithgow. There's 4 right there. But there's another one. Another one who I've talked a lot about for 6 months at least as well. Luke Hansen, who was with at the Panthers last year, adjacent to Jet Cleary. And Luke Hansen has moved up from Jersey Flag. So while he was with the Panthers, he played SG Ball. Then he went to Jersey Flag. This year, he started in Jersey Flag. He did play some NRL trial stuff. Then he played a New South Wales Cup trial. Then he went into Jersey Flag. The last few weeks, he has moved up to New South Wales Cup. And there's some good development stuff happening here, because when you watch that New South Wales Cup game, Luke Hansen playing in the halves, like he's just running and tackling. That's it. But he's a young half learning how to play New South Wales Cup footy. Like in that game, Taintua Picky did a lot of the kicking. Paul Roach did a lot of the kicking. And I just view that as good development. Like that's how they're easing players through. Give them a taste of New South Wales Cup. Give them a taste of Fox Memorial. Give them different roles. Play edge, play middle, play big minutes, play small minutes, play impact, play marathon effort. It's all there. That's part of the Warriors development process. Before all this Jet Cleary stuff, the Warriors already had a young half from the Panthers. They already had 3 halves from regional New South Wales in their system. Then they signed Jet Cleary. So right now, I don't think Jet Cleary's on their books right now. but he's been signed for future footy. So right now the Warriors have signed 5 young Australian halves. 2 from the Panthers. 3 from regions around New South Wales. One of them helped the under-17 Harold Matthews Cup team win their competition. So he seems pretty good as well. But this shouldn't be viewed as the Warriors considering how Australians love to view their catchment areas and local junior nurseries, well, the Warriors are just coming in. They're just coming in and signing your young halves. It's all good. But these teams also have, Kiwi halves in them as well, which is a good sign. Like, it's not like they're just putting young halves, because you can understand why they would sign young halves from Australia, because praise be upon the Australian system of producing rugby league talent, which I think might actually go backwards and New Zealand might take over. But there is a need for those type of halves in the Warriors system. Alongside Jack Thompson and the Harold Matthews Cup team, you had Tyson Hansen. Where's he from? Rotorua. Jersey Flegg, where Luke Hansen was playing a few weeks ago. The halves in their win over the Panthers, you got Cassius Cowley, he's from Tokoroa. Caleb Lyman, he's from Auckland. And then you go New South Wales Cup, you got Luke Hansen in there, you got Ben Farr in there. But Paul Roach played a bit of halves. There was a lot of injury mayhem in that game, so you did have Paul Roach playing some halves footy as well. It's pretty interesting stuff when you dive into it like that. And before I throw it over to you just to see where you want to take this, I'd also highlight the Harold Matthews Cup team. Fantastic regional presence across that team. Just like, I'm not going to go player for player, but some regional funk that stands out to me. Joseph Ratcliffe, fullback, he's from Palmerston North. Carius Booth, the winger, he's from Balclutha. I mentioned Tyson Hansen, he's from Rotorua. Desmond Laban, he's from Wellington. There's some nice, you've got a dude from Balclutha. Let's be honest here. There's some good regional stuff happening there. Not to mention Lennox Tuiloma, who was player of the match in the final for the Warriors Harold Matthews team. And he is from Christchurch. So again, we've talked a lot about Christchurch Rugby League, Canterbury Rugby League. Well, the best player in the Warriors under-17s team who won that competition, he's from Canterbury. And his name's Lennox Tuiloma. And I lied because I'm not going to throw it over to you. I'm going to keep going because Tuiloma is a Linwood Junior from Christchurch. Who else is a Linwood Junior? Oh, it looks like Makaya Tafua is a Linwood Junior. And he is playing hooker for the Warriors in New South Wales Cup. And he looks like a fantastic young dummy half. But he's not necessarily alone in that regard, because they also have Jacob Auloa, who was playing SG Ball, then he moved up to play New South Wales Cup, but he's out injured at the moment, so Makaya Tafua got some game time. Jacob Auloa is from Auckland, but Auloa has impressed me just as much as Makaya Tafua has impressed me. But Auloa didn't play this weekend. Makaya Tafua did play. He's a Linwood Junior. So is Lennox Tuiloma. And if you were signed up to our newsletter, you would have read how Tanner Stowers-Smith, Hallswell Junior from Christchurch, has been going bonkers in New South Wales Cup. You could make a case that the best Warriors juniors are from Christchurch. But that would just be a case. That wouldn't be the actual fact, because they have a centre, 18-year-old Sio Kelly, who is making New South Wales Cup footy look absolutely easy. Easy mahi. Tackle bus everywhere. No dramas, just fitting straight into New South Wales Cup footy. Then you've got Kalis Fatialofa, he's from Auckland. Eddie Iramia's from Auckland. Harry Durbin's from Rotorua. So there's a lovely regional mix across these Warriors juniors teams. Shout out to the Harold Matthews Cup team. They won that competition with great regional mix. Aussie halves in every grade. It's pretty fascinating stuff with the Warriors pipeline at the moment.
Except for the one spanner in the works of the Aussie half thing being that Jet Cleary was technically born in Auckland as well. So you know,
fair play.
Speaking of claims, you can make one there if he happens to go all right. And to be fair, not that the Kiwis have been lacking for halves lately, nor do they seem to be lacking for halves in perpetuity into the future either. I think that's a spot that's fairly well sewn up for the next wee while, but you know, it helps to have options.
So let's go through the grades this weekend. So the New South Wales Cup, they had a draw with the Panthers, 22 all. As I mentioned, Sio Kelly was in the centres. You had a bit of Adam Pompey playing edge forward as well, which I don't mind. Because if Pompey's playing centre for New South Wales Cup, Sio Kelly's not playing centre. But Pompey's big enough, and I actually think he might get some game time in the NRL at edge forward this season, I reckon. Because at the moment, the Warriors are playing Dylan Walker at edge forward when Jackson Ford was off, or Jacob Laban, I think, was off during the Titans. Dylan Walker moved to edge forward. I think Pompey's pretty good there. He's got some nice footwork for an edge forward. He's big enough to play edge forward. He's mobile. He's actually, I'd say he might be agile for an edge forward. You know, he's a bit slow for centre, but he's agile at edge forward. So watch out for Adam Pompey. I mentioned Stowers Smith going crazy. And that's New South Wales Cup. I am interested also in Kalis Fatialofa. He's a very powerful edge forward on the rise in that Warriors system, getting a lot of game time in New South Wales Cup. Jersey Flag, 28-20 over the Panthers. Speaking of regional talent, Toby Crosby, former Wellington Rugby barnstorming loose forward, he's now a prop for the Warriors in Jersey Flag, and he's played another game there, so shout out to him. And the Warriors Jersey Flag team does feature a lot of SG ball talent that is on the rise, but I am enjoying the work of Cassius Cowley. He is the local half who has the most talent, I reckon, out of the Aotearoa halves in the Warriors system. And congratulations to you, the Dragons. They are SG Ball champions. They defeated the Bulldogs 40-18, although there might be some players within the Dragons team who have connections to New Zealand, but I don't have any Kiwi-NRL juniors in that Dragons team. The Bulldogs had Roy Tatupu at fullback from Mount Albert Grammar. Shea Fa'aonga was at centre. He's from Kelston. Point Chevalier Jr. You also had Sasai Alatini, perhaps the best edge forward in SG Ball. Where's he from? Christchurch, Hornby Jr. And Sione Siolua, who is a Manurewa junior as well. So unfortunately for the Bulldogs and the Kiwi-NRL lads there, they lost to the Dragons in SG Ball. But a lot of Kiwi-NRL juniors in that Bulldogs team. And obviously Kiwi-NRL juniors throughout the grades for the Warriors as well.
I don't know where else to take that. The only thing that I hadn't said that I was thinking while you're talking about some of the Jet Cleary stuff was how interesting it was. I mean, I'm repeating what you said a little bit, but how interesting it was that was like a big media announcement. And I guess that's because of the name factor, but it does just sort of like, I don't know that Jet Cleary, does he come in here as like a of those what do we get up to, 5 Aussie junior halves in the system now? Like, does he come in as like the big dog of those 5, or is it just like any one of those guys could end up being a guy who plays 50 first grade games for the Warriors or something like that? Because they're obviously not all going to go on and be key. That's not how the junior pathways work. You have a bunch of players to try and sort of like bottleneck into one or two that might make it as elite NRL players, and a few more that it can pack out your squad and whatever, and you're still going to be signing first grade players from elsewhere. It's just, this is how that whole thing works. But like, does Jet Cleary come in as the big dog of that quintet, or is it sort of just more like he has the name, so they made a point of it?
He has the name and they made a point of it, but it's not all that different to like the Warriors made a big announcement when they signed Zion Mai'u'u and Jacob Laban. I think that was actually a re-signing. It was a few years ago. And for some reason, they decided to announce those signings as junior players, whereas like every other signing they do doesn't get announced. So it's like, you can see that they want to generate the buzz, but they've also signed a lot of other players. They also signed a lot of other players at that time. So I think it's solely the buzz that the Cleary name generates. But to your question, like, Luke Hanson's already playing New South Wales Cup. Jet Cleary isn't playing for the Warriors right now. So I don't see how he can be the big dog if there's already a dude playing New South Wales Cup. But the other dude's like, he's going to be a bigger dog than Jack Thompson because he's under 17s. Like, the age will define some of that. But this actually points to a greater trend that I'm seeing with the Warriors junior system, where they are kind of stockpiling talent. Like, I mean, you've got 5 young Aussie halves from Australia. You don't need 5. Like, you can only play 2 in the NRL and 2 in the New South Wales Cup. Hanson, Sorich, and Egan are all around the same age. Jet Cleary's around that age as well. Like, you don't need that many halves. You don't need the amount of... Because, like, the guys between New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg, there's a lot of dudes playing Fox Memorial who are also playing New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg. So it's like, you don't need all those players. But they're stockpiling the talent, which makes me expand it out to, I think they are just getting as many good players into their system as they can and just let the best players rise up. And that brings the best out of every player. So I think there will be a lot of departures over the next few years where other NRL teams will come and sign the Warriors juniors. And like some, like maybe Talon Egan, who played SG ball, he just goes back to Sydney and someone else signs him because they put him in the spotlight there with the Warriors team. But there's so many good players that it's just like, well, you need to be better. To move up the system, you need to be better. And I think that's the most exciting thing about the Warriors pipeline right now is the competitive depth. And like, Luke Hanson now has to be better than Jet Cleary. Jet Cleary now has to be better than Luke Hanson. And Cassius Cowley might have something to say about all of that. Because he's the dude from Aotearoa there. Same with the NRL team though, because Tamaita Martin has to be better than Luke Metcalf. Luke Metcalf has to be better than Tamaita Martin. Sean Johnson has to play to the best of his ability because there's Tamaita Martin and Luke Metcalf. And if you're... Like, the moment Roger Tuivasa-Sheck starts playing shit, which he hasn't done to this point, I don't think will happen, but the moment he does, Ali Leotawa's there. Like, there's a lot of depth, and as we've seen, it's not just the NRL depth, because there's New South Wales Cup depth, there's Jersey Flegg depth. There's a lot of dudes who I know are in the Warriors system, but they're not playing New South Wales Cup. They're not playing Jersey Flegg. And I mean, they had some pretty good results against the Panthers, so they're doing something right. It's been a bit of an up and down season in New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg. I think they won the first game against the Dragons in Jersey Flegg, then they had a win over the Panthers. So that's a good 2-week stint for the Jersey Flegg team. And they've just got a lot of good players in that mix. So shout out to the Warriors system. I'm enjoying tracking it. I'm enjoying the learnings. Once again, the Warriors have 5 junior halves from Australia, not just Jet Cleary. Can I offer some Kiwi-NRL wrinkles? Because we did have Solomon Alaimalo. I think he made his debut for the Tigers. Of course, recruited from Super Rugby. But again, another storyline you won't hear about in Aotearoa media is that most dudes who play first 15 rugby are also playing league, or they came from league, or they're going to play league. And Solomon Alaimalo moved through the rugby union pipeline, but he's also got a rugby league background. He is a Hornby junior from Christchurch. Again, Canterbury Rugby League, Christchurch in the spotlight. He looked pretty good on the wing for the West Tigers, I thought, so it'll be good to see him progress. I would also throw out there that the Storm and the Broncos are my most entertaining teams. And when we were talking about the Warriors on Friday in our subscriber podcast, we did talk through a lack of pizzazz, a lack of speed, a lack of X factor. What do the Storm and Broncos have? A lot of razzle-dazzle, a lot of speed. And they also have a lot of Kiwi-NRL talent. Broncos, Dean Mariner, Jesse Arthurs, Xavier Willison, Jordan Ricky. 2 of them aren't from Auckland. Xavier Willison from Waikato, Jordan Ricky from Christchurch. Storm, Jerome Hughes, Will Warbrick, Asafa Solomona, Alec MacDonald, might a bit of Joe Chan, if you want to claim him as well. Remus Smith wants to play for the Kiwis, so watch out for him. But the Sharks are top of the table. And the Sharks have a fantastic Kiwi-NRL pipeline. You've seen KL Iro come into the team, Cook Islands International. Ararangi Jr. from the Cook Islands. I don't think he'll ever play for the Kiwis. He'll just keep representing Cook Islands, which would be fantastic. But he's come in at centre. He looks fantastic for the Sharks. Ronaldo Mulatalo, Braden Hamlin-Uele, Britton Nakora are all there. But then it's my favourite cluster of Kiwi-NRL juniors with Felix Fa'atili, Salisi Ata. Haven't seen Richie Tupuaile from Christchurch this season in Jersey Flegg, so hopefully he's still in the Shark system. Will be interesting to see what he does, because he's a big bopper. And in SG Ball, they had Manako Piutau, Sione Latu. So there's a lot of good Kiwi-NRL talent in that Shark system, and they are first in the NRL. And I've said I love Ronaldo Mulatalo as a winger a lot. He's always good to watch as well. So good stuff. Good Kiwi-NRL vibes at the top of the NRL ladder. Good to see a lot of dudes who are from Aotearoa or who want to represent Aotearoa doing great things in the NRL each week. And we've even got a couple of Kiwi-NRL lads in the Dragons these days. So it's looking good.
Yeah, Dragons been working hard to fill that out. Because Raymond Faitala Mariner only signed like at the end of preseason, and then Whamanu Browns joins like 6 weeks into the season. You know, they realized they got into camp and they realized the trends were going. Yeah, there you go. One of the Molo brothers was born in New Zealand as well. I think one was born in New Zealand and one was born in Australia because they moved in between. But I don't think that's I don't know that they obviously didn't play any junior footy here if that's the case. But you know, it's very different to what it has been in the last couple of years. Maybe that's why they win a game every 3 weeks now.
Yeah, but they also got smoked on Anzac Day, so...
Well, only every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They win a game every 3 weeks, but only every 3 weeks. There's no, yeah, that was not a pretty one on Anzac Day.
And it would be rude of me not to talk about the Titans from that Anzac Day victory because like they didn't have Keanu Kinney. They did have Aaron Clark, who I thought kind of changed the game for the Titans in that encounter. They have I don't think there's anyone else. Isaac Liu had a little impact, but the one person I want to highlight is Kieran Foran. Because what did he do for the Kiwis last year? He played hooker, and he was absolutely immense in scoring 80 points across games in New Zealand against Samoa and Australia. It was like 80-0 or something across those two games. And Kieran Foran was playing hooker. Kieran Foran's pretty old. Kieran Foran was buggered from the NRL season, and he chose to represent Aotearoa and play hooker for Aotearoa alongside your mate Fa'amanu Brown. And Kieran Foran was pretty instrumental in that win for the Titans as well. So I'm loving a bit of Kieran Foran. Like, it's a tough watch. He's not overly fast, and he's always buggered, whether that be due to fatigue or injury, but he always shows up, usually gets the job done, and he's always impressive. So shout out to Kieran Foran for his mahi for Aotearoa and with the Titans as well.
Yeah, a legendary trooper, that bloke. Like, just one of those fellas who the concept of anything less than 100% is unknown to him. You know, he's just through whatever adversity, and there's often a lot of adversity. But he, he's battled a number of injuries. He's played for some pretty bad teams. Earlier on in his career, he had, off-field dramas as well briefly. And there's a fella who continually keeps getting back up and going and playing pretty good footy, all things considered as well. There's a lot to love about that. And at some point, I think that's going to... at some point, a dude like that gets his flowers, as they say. It's at some stage, probably when he announces his retirement, people are going to realize, like, damn, that dude had a hell of a career. That dude achieved some things in the NRL and beyond as a rugby league player, and he's done it through just like, yeah, every time you knock him down, he gets back up. He's immense, that bloke.
Yeah, I'd rather he just keeps playing and keeps providing exceptional mahi for Aotearoa and the Titans, because that, like, if he can do a few more things, he'll like, his legend will only grow. Like, if he's helping teams win right now, there's no reason why he can't extend this run of form. Let's get into Wellington Phoenix. So we're still waiting on this game versus Mariners in Adelaide on Wednesday night. I imagine if the Mariners get a win, they'll go top of the table. What about a draw? What's the logistics there?
A draw would see the Mariners go level with the Phoenix, but they have the tiebreaker. So it would also mean the Mariners win the minor premiership, win the Premier's Plate. So yeah, there was a period there where Newcastle Jets were playing Central Coast, and it was a sort of concurrent kickoff with the Phoenix game. So it was double screen. They had one on the telly and one on the phone. And there was a point there where, what turned out not to be necessary, because on the TV they were just updating the scores whenever something happened anyway. But there was a period there where Newcastle Jets equalized early in the second half, and they were on top of that game too. From what I was watching, the Jets were playing pretty well. They just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net against a very, very good Central Coast defensive unit. And yeah, if that had held on for a draw, then a draw against Adelaide would have been enough for the Knicks, because 2 points down. But alas, that didn't happen. And Central Coast, despite all their travels, despite all their just the hectic fixture list they've been going through, trying to compete on two different fronts in the AFC Cup and the A-League at the same time, they finished stronger than the Newcastle Jets and scored a couple of later goals and went on to a 3-1 victory. So yeah, I think the minor premiership is more or less sorted for Central Coast. I don't really see them losing to Adelaide. It's possible. There's a chance. Got to keep an eye out on that result just to see how it goes. But I think Phoenix fans at this point probably should be. I mean, I was going to say resigned because that's just the cliche of how to say that is resigned to second place, but also second place is the best finish the Phoenix have ever had. They've had a record wins tally, record in terms of fewest goals conceded, record points, record goal difference. Like it's their best ever regular season. I don't think second place is a disappointing thing. Ultimately, second place, you get the same benefit as you get from first, which is a bye through the first round of the finals and then home second leg in the semi-finals. So yeah, it'd be nice to get a little bit of silverware, but it doesn't actually really affect their quest for a premiership, for a championship rather. Doesn't really affect that one way or another whether they finish first or second. But we will find out on Wednesday night which way that goes.
What's the benefit of finishing first? Like, is this like a? I understand the Phoenix want to win the plate. They want the good vibes, the big headlines. They want the Jet Cleary moment. Probably more of a
Jet Cleary moment.
I think it's more of a Fisher Harris moment, to be honest. With respect to Jet Cleary, this is a Aotearoa situation. Jet Cleary was born in Aotearoa, but we'll go with Fisher Harris for obvious reasons, I think. We want the Wellington Phoenix to have their Fisher Harris moment. Winning the headlines, winning the buzz, giving the fans reasons to celebrate. But is there a tangible benefit to finishing first? Because ultimately they want to win the A-League. So is this a key moment in winning the A-League, or does it impact your optimism and hope that they can win the A-League?
It is in probably two ways. The first one is a minor way. The second one could become a major way, but it depends what happens. The first one, the minor one, is that you do first versus second. Like first, whoever finishes first plays the lowest ranked winner of the elimination finals. So it's not just like bracketed. It's based on who had the best record and things. So if, for example, the sixth place team wins over the third place team, first place would automatically play them because sixth place is the lowest ranked team left in the competition. So they will be the lowest ranked team to make the semifinals. However, the sixth ranked team is Melbourne City, so I don't really want to play them as a Phoenix fan. So I'm fine with that. You know, I don't see that being the matchup sort of aspect of that being much of a factor. But there is obviously one major tangible aspect of finishing first versus second, which is that you're guaranteed, if you make the grand final, home field advantage. So if it's the Central Coast versus Wellington Phoenix grand final and the Central Coast have finished first, Central Coast will be hosting that grand final. And the Phoenix have a good away record. They're largely because they've been very good at avoiding defeats, been grinding out some good draws there. But they have a great home record. They have the best home record in the competition. So the difference between a grand final at home versus a grand final away would be pretty substantial. Of course, there is also the chance that Central Coast don't make the grand final and the Phoenix do, in which case the Phoenix would be hosting it because they would be the highest ranked qualifier. So they could only play a grand final at Sky Stadium or in Gosford. So if they should progress to that stage, obviously they haven't actually won a finals game for about a decade. So might want to get that little milestone out of the way with first before thinking about anything further. But that is the big tangible difference is home field advantage throughout the playoffs and not just in the semifinal.
The Phoenix did have a good win. I think it was 3-0 over MacArthur FC in Wellington. Big crowd, fantastic atmosphere and a game environment. What did you learn from that win to help take us forward into A-League finals?
What did I learn? Maybe nothing in a weird way. There's a little bit like Oscar Zavada taking the penalty at the end instead of Alex Rufer. They were both on the pitch in the other game. Rufer took it and missed. Both on the pitch in this game. Zavada took it and scored. So maybe that's the like maybe that honor has flipped over from one to the other. But other than that, it just felt like it didn't feel like there was anything to learn from this Phoenix game. It just felt like a good situation against a team they've beaten a couple times already, a team that they know they can create chances against. They put a few away in the first half, nice and ruthless. That always helps. And from there, just kind of controlled the game. But they beat MacArthur by doing the stuff that's got them to this point in the first place. Like they beat them by being the same team that is currently sitting top of the A-League ladder and might still be there in 48 hours. Probably won't be, but could be. But regardless, has had record finish. I didn't see any major tweaks or shifts or anything like that. I just saw a lot of more of the same, which I think is almost more important heading into finals because that shows consistency and it shows their players, aware of what their role is, aware of how the team's trying to play, what they're trying to achieve, and are in good form, good touch. Like Costa Barbarouses had a really good game, scored a nice goal that was pretty important after he was below par against the Jets in the previous game. Like now that they've finished the regular season, we can say Alex Paulson, Finn Sermon, and Scott Wooden played every single minute throughout this entire campaign, which is unreal. Like, especially for the two outfielders, the two centre backs. I mean, but also for Sermon and Paulson, who had only played limited amounts of games prior to the season, and then come in and they play every single minute through the entire campaign, anchoring the best defense in the league. Although I'll say that having that consistent anchor is also a big reason why they were the best defense in the league, is because they had the same centre backs and goalkeeper throughout the entire season. But yeah, no, they beat MacArthur the way they've beaten MacArthur twice already this season, and will hopefully beat them again if they happen, because MacArthur are in the top six. So there's a possibility they could end up playing them in their semi-final, which would honestly be the best imaginable matchup for the Phoenix if that does. Not saying that would be a simple task or an easy task. Obviously, finals footy is a different beast, but like I would prefer that to Sydney FC, Melbourne Victory, or Melbourne City, who were the other options for who they might play in the finals. So we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, no, there wasn't a lot to learn, but I think that in itself is quite an encouraging thing about the Phoenix.
We have seen a lot of young players get opportunities outside the first 11. So like guys like Paulson, Finn Sermon and Ben Old are usually amongst the best Phoenix players as far as just playing most weeks. But we have seen a lot more younger players get game time as the depth is tested, as they have injuries and whatnot. How, like, is it just those three kind of getting a lot of game time in a full strength finals Wellington Phoenix mixer, or is there anyone else we should be watching out for as young Kiwi players who can or might step up? Like, I don't know if I've seen a lot of Kelly Hield.
No, he seems to have dropped back below Sam Sutton on the in the pecking order, which Sutton was injured at the start of the season, so that's part of why that happened in the first place. And Sutton's just a more experienced, more established player, and a better player. He's a couple of years older as well, which helps definitely when you talk about young players. But Kelly Hield, I'm sure, will do a job in the finals if called upon. Sutton does have a bit of a nasty injury history. And at one point he was limping with I think it looked like an ankle knock or something in the last game, just prior to halftime. Ended up battling through that. So I guess that wasn't such a drama. Maybe just one of those like collision things. You got to run it off sort of deals. But that is definitely a possibility. But if Sutton's fit, I don't necessarily know if you see Kelly Hield, unless you get into the situation where Kelly Hield's playing centre back and a back three, which has happened before where they've both been in the team. So that's a tactical possibility. I think Isaac Hughes is the other one who would, now that he's back to fitness, if he's got the match fitness required, he might come in, particularly for an away game against one of the, against a tricky team. They might look to go back three and just try and make sure they don't concede, and then back themselves to win at home, which is generally how they've operated throughout the season anyway. That's how they've put so many points on the table. That's a possibility. I definitely, though, think we will see you'll see a little bit of Oscar Van Hatten regardless. Like he won't be starting, but he will be one of their more reliable or more trusted bench options, especially if they're chasing a goal, which again has been a pattern of recent weeks. Is he'll come on, try to do something funky, and it's not been something that was the case in his game prior to the season, but definitely in the last few months, he's really begun to provide a bit of that final product. You know, he scored his first A-League goal and he's been able to get a few assists. He's won a couple penalties, I think, as well, at least one. Um, all that kind of stuff. Like he's given some bang for his buck there, and that is why he will be one of those dudes. You know, if you get to the 70th minute and you're down 1-0, he'll be one of those types of dudes that Chiefy will chuck on and say, okay, maybe it wasn't your day here, David Ball or Bozidar Kraev or whoever, but we're not afraid to sub off an import player and chuck on an academy graduate who has, who'll give them a different option, bit of width on the right side usually, and has brought some end products. So no dramas there. You know, he's earned those minutes that he's going to get.
What's leading your Flying Kiwis buzz this week?
Well, leading the Flying Kiwis article is going to be Michael Boxall because he scored a goal, and I just thought it was a good opportunity to highlight Boxy just because he is one of those dudes who in many ways the Kieran Foran of Kiwi football. Is the dude who he probably hasn't had so many setbacks type things, but he is just a dude who turns up every week and gives maximum effort and intensity, and it's never worse than like 7 out of 10 minimum. Like he's just he's super reliable, super consistent, and scored a goal on the weekend, so I did want to highlight him. But the sneaky stuff I think at the moment is happening in England, where you've just had the women's second tier just wrapped up. Rhea Percival's team won it. Rhea Percival on loan at Crystal Palace for the second half of the season. She played, I think, 13 games for them, but I think she made 9 starts, all at right back, interestingly. So she's moved back to right back instead of the midfield role that she'd been playing previously for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. They kept 6 clean sheets in the 9 games that she started, so that's a pretty good record. And yeah, Crystal Palace won. They're going up to the WSL, but Rhea Percival was only on loan at Palace. So technically she goes back to Spurs, and I wonder how that dynamic goes. Like, since I think if Crystal Palace hadn't been promoted, nothing changes. Like she goes back to Spurs and tries to win her place back. But the fact that they have been promoted, I wonder maybe if she wrangles another loan or even a permanent deal to stay at Crystal Palace, and where she knows she'll get more game time and will be playing at the same league because they're both WSL clubs now. That's one that I'm curious to see how that sort of unfolds. Other players have been playing in the WSL Championship, like Olivia Page is at Sheffield United as a youngster. She's more a long-term prospect, played a couple Cup games, but didn't play in the league. However, you did see Grace Neville coming back from injury. She got injured in the Olympic qualifiers back in February, came back from injury last week, made her first start since injury on the weekend. Same team as Paige Satchel. I expect Neville to be back there at London City. I'll see how they go with Satchel. I think it's quite a good situation for her, though, so hopefully that's an option she can stay at. But Katie Kitching at Sunderland as well. I'm sure she'll probably just stay at Sunderland and try to get them promoted next year. They were challenging with Crystal Palace, but a couple bad results in the last month saw them fall back. But the most curious of them is Jacqui Hand, because she joined Lewis FC midway through the season when they could barely score a goal, looking dead set for relegation. Not the only signing. Like, it wasn't a one-woman band thing here where Jacqui Hand turns up and suddenly they get better. They made a few signings trying to stay up. However, they just had this nasty little run where they kept conceding late goals. Like, they were playing well, they were competing, and then they'd lose 3-2, or they'd concede late and draw 2-2 or something. And so they dropped a few too many points there, and then found some tricky fixtures towards the end, just weren't as winnable as they needed to be. They got relegated. Jacqui Hand did score in their last game of the season, so that was cool. She hadn't scored up to that point. She'd had a few assists, but she hadn't actually scored a goal, which was nice to get off the mark. But it also might be her last game for them because they did get relegated, and I don't see the point in a first 11 Football Ferns player playing third tier club football. And she's off contract anyway. She only signed for the rest of this year. So at the time, I wondered if that might be a like, it's mid-season, it's hard to get a gig. We'll play half a year here in the second tier, get accustomed, get used to living in England, and then maybe see if I can get a gig at one of the top championship clubs, or maybe even a WSL team. I think that's about where we're at now there. So hopefully that's how that unfolds. But there's a few sneaky ones there. Um, Obviously, Chris Wood's trying not to get relegated in the Premier League. That's going to go down to the last day of the season when Nottingham Forest play Burnley. So it's gonna be like you or me, him against his old club, which is frisky one. Of course, it could end up that Luton Town win a couple games and they both get relegated, and that would be probably worst case scenario. But there's that. Ben Wane's trying not to get relegated with Plymouth Argyle as well. There's a few too many of these trying not to get relegated stories. But below that, League One and League Two have wrapped up, and two dudes to highlight because of how their own clubs highlighted them. Tyler Bindon with Reading, mentioned him a few times recently because he's just been superb. And it's been recognised how superb he was. He came second in the Player of the Year voting for Reading FC, which is one spot lower than Max Crocombe did for Burton Albion, who also managed to avoid relegation, both of those two clubs. And Max Crocombe was named as player of the season for them. Turned up first year with the club, joins them because they had a manager who he worked with when he was on loan at a lower tier team back in the day. Joins up with an old manager as the second choice initially, but then the first choice plays crap, and within a month he's earned the starting gigs. Barely misses a minute throughout the entire rest of the season. When he did, it was only because he went away for all whites duty. And was their most consistent player throughout a pretty poor season. But if they didn't have Max Crocombe in goal, they would have been relegated. His saves made the difference there. And player of the season for Burton Albion. He outlasted that manager, by the way, by several months. That dude was gone before Christmas, and Max Crocombe just stayed on, kept on making saves. So two regular at this point. I think we can say that about Tyler Bindon. We can definitely say it about Max Crocombe. Two regular all-white selections who had fantastic seasons. There's a few others I could sort of list through in England, but I'm kind of tired of talking at this point. But I will just say the key thing, the other important thing to say is that Anna Leet, who got sent off, I don't know did you see Anna Leet's red card the other week?
Outside the box handball?
Yeah, makes a brilliant diving stop, but also like you're 2 meters outside the box. So straight red card. There was some confusion because on the BBC, they said it was going to be a 3-match suspension. And then the rules seemed to suggest that one, maybe because it wasn't so, it depended whether they said it was like unsportsmanlike contact or if they said it was like a deliberate handball to stop a goal kind of thing. So it depended which way they go, whether there'll be 3 games or 1 game. Because Anna Leeds getting this little spot where the Aston Villa starting goalkeeper is out injured for the rest of the season. She's got a little window of opportunity to try and stake a claim for the number 1 role next season, whether that's with Villa or elsewhere, because she is off contract. And then there was this possibility she might actually be suspended for the last 3 games. But it turns out that's not the case. It's only going to be a 1-game suspension. So she missed their game against West Ham, and she will be back this week, which is cool, important. Good minutes for Anna Leach. She needs that. At a time where her other Football Ferns goalkeeping rival, Vic Essen, is just kept a clean sheet against Celtic for Rangers in the Scottish Cup semi-finals. So she's off to the Scottish Cup final, having already won the Scottish League Cup earlier on in the season. She only really plays the cup games. She's back up for Rangers, so she plays the cup games and then the one league game directly before the cup game to make sure she's match fit for the cup game. It's kind of been the pattern for the last 6 months, but it's working, and she might win a cup double. So, both. It's good when you see. It's good to have 2 very good goalkeepers for the Football Ferns. It's even better when they're sort of nudging each other on in that competitive sort of competition for places type thing. Like what we're saying about the Warriors juniors and stuff before, it's, iron sharpens iron.
Let's finish with a bit of NBL basketball. As I said earlier, Wellington Saints 5-1, top of the table. Franklin Bulls 5-1, second through points differential. As seems to be the case every week now. Shout out to the Southland Sharks. They are 0-7. Before I get your takeaways from the weekend and whatever else has been happening, I did check. I went into the stats and I went into player sorted by points per game, and Luther Muhammad, he's first, and then second is MJ. Just MJ. MJ's out here. MJ is second points per game. I click through to MJ, and that is James Walker Jr. So somehow James Walker Jr., who I don't actually know who he plays for. He doesn't play for the Chicago Bulls. But somehow James Walker Jr. becomes MJ. But he's only averaging 25 points per game. So he's not exactly MJ, but he is MJ. So I don't know how James Walker Jr. became MJ, but it seems like a bit of a funny thing happening here on the NBL stat spreadsheet, where I think a lot of the imports are leading the points per game. Luther Muhammad, MJ, Isaiah Moore, Samson Froling, Kamani Lawrence, Keanu Rasmussen, Lachlan Ulbrich. None of them sound like Kiwi basketballers off the top of my head. Then we get to Corey Webster. Am I correct in saying that they are all imports?
Mostly. The one slippery one there, and he's a dude who I have been waiting to mention on the podcast at some point too. So this is a good introduction for that. Is Keanu Rasmussen, who is born and raised in Australia. Was, I think, the last 2 seasons he was a development player with, it might have been Adelaide, one or the other. He's registered as a local player, though, for this competition because it turns out his dad is a Kiwi. So he is sort of part of that wave of sort of off-season fringe Australian NBL players, like, Ulbrich and a couple of those others you mentioned there who are top scorers, who are popping up, playing some Kiwi stuff in their off season, trying to keep fresh and sort of progress themselves a little bit further in their careers. But he is technically eligible to play for the Tall Blacks if he chooses to go down that path. So I'm keeping him in my sort of Kiwi basketball consideration, with brackets, with an asterisk, with with qualifications, but he is a potential dude who might decide to, like Tightly Atapaya did for the Tall Ferns. So someone around the similar sort of pedigree who has the option to represent Aotearoa. So we'll see how that goes down the line. But yeah, Corey Webster seems to be the dude for the established known Kiwi as just a guy who pops up and scores 20 points every week. Like, he just seems to do that consistently. He hasn't had like a 35-point game like Rasmussen did, but he just every week seems to give them 20 to 25 for the Auckland Tuatara, and that's one of the reasons why they're very good at the moment. And they were the team that beat Franklin. They were the team that stopped the Franklin Bulls winning streak.
Wellington Saints are first, though, and if Wellington Saints are first, that means we got some good Liafa stuff happening. And I'm just always interested in Liafa 3-point percentage, 39.7%. Let's see how that stacks up in a... Well, there's a lot of dudes who don't take minutes, so I won't worry about that.
Yeah, it's tricky to look at that. Yeah.
He is shooting well from 3-point, but I'm more interested in Hiram Harris because he's averaging 19.3 points per game, 6.5 assists per game, 11.7 rebounds per game. He's got 1.8 steals per game. Hiram Harris is once again doing everything. You've got Isaiah Liafa, the guard. He's shooting threes. Wellington Saints, they are top of the table. And just based on Hiram Harris and Liafa, Wellington Saints are my favourite team.
You might want to chuck some Toe Smith-Milner in there as well, who's earned himself back into another gig with Brisbane Bullets, I believe. And his thing in the Aussie NBL has always been like but can he become a consistent 3-point shooter? And then here he is in the NZNBL just drilling them. Like, I think he's over 40%. He had a game where he hit like 7 of them or something like that, 6 or 7. I think it was a 30-point game against Otago a couple of weeks ago. And when you've got, because to be honest, similar things could be said about Liafo. It's like he's a good shooter, but he's not necessarily a consistent shooter. But he's also just signed a nice little progressive deal, popping himself up with the Sydney Kings. Both of those two guys, it's like if they can become 35 to 40% 3-point shooters in the Australian stuff, they become like their ceiling shatters because they become so much more effective as players because they do all these other things. Especially Liafo, who's such a good defender. Like, here they are both shooting around about 40% for the Wellington Saints, who are a team that also has Hiram Harris doing crazy things. And, they're a good team. And they score like, I looked at this on Friday and they've played a game since then where they scored 111 points. So I don't think anything's changed. They're like, you look at points per game, there's like 4 or 5 or 6 teams that are all around about sort of like 92 points per game. And then here's Wellington about 8 points ahead of that, averaging like 100 plus. And you look at the 3-point percentages, there's Wellington shooting like, I think 35, 36% or something like that as a team. And the next best is like 33, 32. Like there's a big gap between them and everyone else in all these key like offensive scoring categories. Defensively, I'm sure they're pretty sound. Those are good defenders that we also mentioned there, those 3 key Kiwi players there. But particularly the way that they just score an unstoppable amount of points, that's why they're winning a lot of games right now. It's just this ability to put the ball in the hoop, as they say.
What else tickles your fancy from some of these other teams?
Well, I did see Southland just cut one of their imports. So, something was bound to happen. I think Alonso Burton did play on the weekend, though. So maybe they'll get a little bit more competitive from here. I don't know. I really dug watching Carlin Davison on the weekend. They was just Taranaki against Nelson. I think they actually played them twice, but it was the second game in particular where he scored like 26 points. And if you watch Carlin Davidson, as we both have a fair bit over the last sort of year and a half, just incredible, like, trampoline bounce in his ankles. He's so bouncy. He gets up, gets rebounds. He plays with great like energy, and he grabs steals. He looks to block shots. He does all this, but he doesn't really shoot very well. And that's the one. That's not just like he misses shots. It's also like the shot looks clunky coming out of his hand before it even gets to the thing. Well, he's had a year with the Breakers where he didn't play. Didn't get a single minute for the Breakers. Never got on the court. Barely even got to kit up for them. But he's still training with them all the time. And as much as the Breakers do prefer to give the old development boost to like random French dudes and Lithuanians and whatever, if you're Carlin Davidson hanging out with the Breakers, you're still picking up a bit of that Modi Mayor kind of technical adherence stuff. And he knocked down a few 3-pointers on the weekend in that 26-pointer. He was, that shot looks a whole lot smoother than it did 12 months ago. I'm curious to see how this progresses. If he's fixed that jump shot, sky's the limit. Same as what I was saying about those other guys, but even more so because here's a guy who's like trying to get into the Australian NBL. If he's knocking down 3-pointers at something regular, well, that's a completely different Carlin Davidson that we're talking about.
And shout out to the Davison whānau because Tiana Davison played for, I think she went back-to-back NRLW championships with the Knights, then made her Kiwi Ferns debut last year, and now she's signed with the Roosters. So pretty good whānau sporting stuff happening there. I did see Carlin Davison shooting 33.3% from 3-point. Liafa's up around 39, and Tohi Milner-Smith is a smidge over 40% shooting from 3. So, like, we love our big men, and we love our Hiram Harris types of ballers here in Aotearoa, but it seems like they're adding a little bit. You're adding a little bit to the prototypical Kiwi basketballer at the moment. Like you need to be physical. You need to fit into a team and rebound and do all the Kiwi stuff that we know and love about Aotearoa sport. But in basketball these days, you need to shoot the 3-pointer. Hiram Harris isn't as good, so that's room to grow. But Hiram Harris literally does everything else to like the highest level in whatever league he's playing, so that's all right. But these other dudes, as you said, to get into Australian NBL, not just the contracts, because we've seen a lot of the dudes get the contracts, but to get the game time, you need to be able to do a job. And I don't think it's, we're not breaking any news here. To get more game time, if you can shoot 3-pointers and do all the other stuff that you usually do pretty well, it's going to help you out in getting that game time. And I don't think it's a coincidence that given the state of New Zealand basketball and the talent coming through, guys who have been on the scene for a couple of years now, Milner Smith and Carlin Davison, they are putting up really good shooting numbers as well as everything else they do.
Yeah, like that's the key development in so many ways for a few of these dudes, because we trust that they can do the sort of intangibles, the 1%ers and all those kind of things. We trust that because that's just the culture. Like if you've been around the Tall Blacks, you're expected to do that. If you're playing NZNBL, like you're around those dudes, you're picking up these lessons, and then like that's the standard that's being set for you. But yeah, if you can, basketball games are won on who scores more points, right? If you can score some points, if you can just raise that bar a little bit, there's so many players who would benefit from that. And yeah, we've highlighted a few key ones who could be potentially making significant strides in their career if this is something that becomes sustainable. If those shots keep dropping, yeah, who knows?
Righto, that is the Niche Cast for today. We'll be back on Thursday with our subscriber podcast, so stay tuned for that. Appreciate your time here with us. Big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, chur chur.